Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Whoever wins this contest, give them your backing. We must end the division, the backbiting, the squabbling. We mustn't nurse old grudges, but build new friendships.
Former Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's farewell warning to his fellow Conservatives, but will they heed it? Hello, you're listening to Bloomberg UK Politics, live from the Conservative Party conference in Birmingham. I'm Lizzy.
And I'm James Woolcock. Welcome to the programme.
So you heard it there, a dressing down directive from the former Prime Minister and current Conservative Party leader, albeit not for much longer. Stop bickering. But doesn't seem like the leadership candidates are listening so far. There were reports of a more buoyant than expected mood here in Birmingham, as many watched on, whilst the Labour conference was plagued by freebie headlines. But it appears the Tories haven't fared much better when it comes to controlling the narrative surrounding their gathering. Everyone is talking about the infighting. Of course, Kemi Badenoch's remarks on maternity pay have ruffled a few feathers, including those of her own rival leadership candidates. The slogan of this conference is review and rebuild, but can they really do that in the midst of a bitter and hard-fought leadership battle?
Lizzy, there is a very strange similarity to Labour here. Completely different in vibes. There is an odd upbeatness here, but what is similar is at Labour, we kept getting told, come back in 6 weeks when there's a budget, and then we'll have a real discussion about what this party is going to look like and what it's going to do. Here as well, it's, oh, well, come back in a few weeks' time, and when we have a real leader, we'll tell you about what the real direction of the party is and what we're going to do next. In both, we're kind of in this conference where everyone's in limbo. The difference in Labour, though, is they were miserable about what was going to happen in 6 weeks. Whereas here, there's a kind of, I don't know whether to use the word excitement or to use the word relief, that they might have something optimistic to be talking about in the future.
But look, it's not just about what the party itself wants to see from a potential next government. There are a number of other stakeholders that the next leader will have to win over here. In economic terms, perhaps the most important issue is business. There are fewer sector leaders here in Birmingham than there were at the Labour conference. But nevertheless, the leadership candidates will want to impress the city figures who are here, especially as Labour's big bet on growth is proving tricky to materialise. GDP figures this morning showing growth slightly lower than anticipated this year. And I've been speaking to Chris Hayward, policy chairman of the City of London Corporation, who says they really do need to get on with picking a leader. Here's a snippet of our conversation.
Well, I think it's certainly lost its way at this moment in time, and I think it's a political party that's now in reflective mode as to where now, what do they do next. And the challenge of developing policies and a strategy for the next election, of course, begins once they've chosen their new party leader. So the focus here in Birmingham, from what I can see, is all about the 4 candidates remaining. And until that decision is made, which of course we won't know until early November, then I think this party cannot really decide strategically what direction it wants to go in. It's had a mammoth defeat, so there's an air of sort of acceptance here, I think, after such a long time in government. But clearly they need to regroup, they need to rethink. And whoever they choose as a leader, I would say, needs to be supportive of business, supportive of the financial and professional services sector that I represent in the City of London, because that is the engine room of the British economy.
So let's get some analysis now from our UK politics editor, Alex Wickham, who joins us now as we overlook the conference. Alex, we played the Rishi Sunak directive to stop squabbling, but over the weekend we've had Kemi Badenoch being characteristically punchy and talking about maternity leave. Do you think that that'll be her Andrea Leadsom moment?
That was the question yesterday. Has Kemi Badenoch blown up her chances of winning the Tory leadership? And I think not yet. She has reminded Conservative MPs who choose the final 2 to go through to the ballot of members. You know, she's reminded Conservative MPs that she has a tendency to get embroiled in public arguments and fights by making comments that perhaps other politicians wouldn't. She argues that that's a sign of her authenticity and, you know, the fact that she's willing to say things that others aren't. Critics would say that more professionalism is needed, and if you keep getting yourself into messes like this and scraps, you're going to just create negative headlines which are going to bog you down. I think the other candidates have sensed that she has had a moment of weakness, and they're all sort of pincering her now and really applying pressure and trying to tell MPs here, look, if you put Kemi Badenoch on the ballot, she might win with members, and then we've got 5 years of awkward headlines coming up when this happens again and again.
So she did create negative headlines, but she also created headlines. And one thing that's in quite short supply at this conference is attention. You know sort of all the inside track better than me, Alex. How many kind of business people, senior journalists, etc.? What is the kind of like attendance here at this conference?
Yeah, it's not great. You can tell it's very thinly attended. Very few senior business people, very few business people at all, to be honest. Even among Tories, there's a lot of former MPs, almost more former MPs than current MPs. There's a lot of people from the past, rather than a sense of serious operators here planning for the future. And I think that is a sign of how far the party has to go. You mentioned that sort of feeling of optimism among some delegates. I think that's true. It's kind of like gallows humour, though. They're almost sort of free from the responsibility of government, and now that's Labour's job. That's why Labour are in such a bad mood, because they realise how hard it is running the country. Whereas the Tories now, they have that sort of gallows humour. The problem is they're going to realise very, very quickly that people aren't going to care about what they say for the next 4 years.
So the bookies' favourites to win this leadership contest are the more right-wing candidates, Robert Jenrick and Kemi Badenoch, and that's because it's the grassroots who pick the next leader, just as it was when Liz Truss beat Rishi Sunak. Surely they would have learned from that experience that it might help to change the rules. Is there any discussion going on about changing the rules or broadening the membership so that they don't keep producing the same result? I'm sure there's a quote about making the same mistake repeatedly meaning something.
Absolutely. There are certainly some MPs on the centre of the party. The Labour Party has this debate as well, about basically meaning MPs select the leader rather than members. I don't think that will fly in the Conservative Party. That the members would revolt off to Nigel Farage and Reform, even more so than perhaps they already have done over the last year, if they were to pull something like that. I mean, it's really interesting what you say about Jenrick being the bookies' favourite. Yes, he is, but I do think this is an open contest. It's really hard to predict. The Conservative MP electorate is really hard to read. I was talking to a really right-wing MP earlier who you would assume would back Robert Jenrick as the sort of most right-wing candidate on paper in terms of his policy positions, and he was actually backing Tom Tugendhat, the most left-wing candidate on paper, just because of personal relations between them. So it is really hard to read how MPs are going to go. That does mean that somebody like James Cleverly, who's probably seen as third in the bookies, rankings, could well easily beat Kemi Badenoch onto the ballot. He could then pitch himself to members as a sort of amiable choice who could reach out to the country and bring the party together. So I wouldn't write him off yet. It is pretty open, I would say, and that is probably where one area of interest lies. Does Jenrick have it sewn up? Not quite yet, I don't think.
Okay, so what are these four candidates doing? What are they going around conference doing? Where are you following them? How are they trying to kind of win up round support? What should we be watching for?
So they're each doing a sort of little Q&A session. They each have one of those on the main stage. Today we've got Jenrick and Badenoch, so that'll be quite spicy. What we're looking for really are moments like Kemi Badenoch's maternity pay row. Is there a candidate who puts a foot wrong basically and gets himself into a bit of political trouble? Does that derail their campaign? I mean, the other thing that I'm looking for is there an effort by the other three campaigns, so James Cleverly's campaign, Tom Tugendhat's campaign and Robert Jenrick's campaign, to keep Kemi Badenoch off the ballot? Kemi Badenoch's team say that she has the support among Conservative members. Private polling and polling on the Conservative Home website suggests that Tory members favour Kemi Badenoch. So it's arguably in the interests of Jenrick, Cleverly and Tugendhat to try and keep Badenoch off the ballot, to keep this maternity row story going. If it's Jenrick versus Cleverly in the final two, they both fancy themselves. Whereas I think if either of them faced Kemi, they might worry that Badenoch was the favourite with members. So that is the other really interesting dynamic that we're starting to see. Is there a little bit of collusion going on between those other campaigns to try and undermine Kemi Badenoch? And will Kemi Badenoch try and use that to her advantage and say, look, I'm the one that they're all trying to do down here because I'm the one that you really want?
Well, yeah, do you think that this is the beginning of the race getting ugly? Can they not avoid infighting from this point?
Yeah, and going back to those Sunak remarks, about everybody getting on and stopping the backbiting, yeah, good luck with that. I mean, we have seen very toxic briefings in the last 24 hours between particularly the Badenoch and Jenrick camps. There is no love lost there at all. And to be honest, over the last few weeks, they might all be some of the candidates who play nice publicly and say that, oh, I'm great friends with all of the others. Behind the scenes, there are very toxic briefings about the personal lives of the other candidates and things that are quite below the belt. And you're starting to see, I think, with that sort of blow up yesterday, the sort of boiling over of tensions, and that will be something that will remind voters that the Tory party is kind of addicted to this infighting. And when Sunak makes a perfectly reasonable point about how they need to move on from all of that, it isn't happening yet.
I enjoy that we've got a new slogan now, from stop the boats to stop the backbiting. I don't want to underestimate the scale of the challenge the next leader might face here, Alex. I guess, is it possible that whoever is elected here could either be the next Prime Minister or could lead the Conservatives to being overtaken by Reform in the next election?
Yeah, and, speaking to some Tories really before the conference, they do see some glimmers of hope for the first time in the wobbles that Keir Starmer has had over the last few weeks. They do think that politics is volatile these days. Voters are fickle. Voters have short memories and can quickly turn on a party or a government, and that in 5 years anything can happen. And to be fair to them, look what happened in the last 5 years: multiple governments, multiple crises. Who knows what's ahead? So yeah, of course there is a chance that there is a route to power for whoever's elected. I think probably more Tories are slightly more realistic than that and think maybe the next leader, whoever wins in the next few weeks when they're announced, might not be the leader to take the party into the next general election. Perhaps there will be another handover of power within the next 5 years to somebody from the next generation of MPs, because really the biggest challenge for the next Conservative leader is throwing off the reputation that the Tories have with the public. And remember, all four of these candidates served in multiple administrations from the last government.
UK political editor Alex Wickham, live from Birmingham. Thank you very much.
Well, that's it from us for today. If you like the programme, don't forget to subscribe and give it 5 stars so other people can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever you listen.
This episode was produced by Tiwa Adebayo and our audio engineer was Meredith Frank. I'm James Woolcock.
And I'm Lizzy Burden. We'll be back with more tomorrow. This is Bloomberg.
Bloomberg UK Politics. Listen weekdays at noon on DAB Digital Radio in London.